Hello and welcome to the fifth episode of the True North CFL podcast. I am your host, Jimmy Leach. You can follow me on Twitter at AKA Jimmy Leach.
I'm Taylor Curry, and you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Taylor Curry SK.
I'm Carter Kennington. You can find me on Instagram at Carter Kennington.
I'm James Tees. You can follow me at James underscore Tees on Instagram. And I just want to say this: I'm a friggin' road grader.
Nice, nice. And you may notice another host in James here. He is on because we have a special segment coming up later on in the show. But we are going to kick this thing off with game one of last week, where BC beat the lowly Red Blacks 29-5. And I gotta say, Taylor, you were right about Duron Carter last week, man. He scored his first touchdown of the year.
I knew it. It was the breakout
Yeah,
game.
it was. It was 10.
Week 14.
It was 10 fantasy points, but there you go. And then, all right, so we'll get to our questions here. In the off season, should Ottawa get a new head coach and rebuild, sort of like Chris Jones did with the Riders in 2016, or keep their current staff?
I don't know if it's the right decision to get rid of Rick Campbell. He does seem to be a good coach, and maybe these all weren't his moves to get rid of all these guys. But this could happen to any football team if you let your stars go. So I don't think they should get rid of him yet.
Yeah, it looks like it was just sort of unfortunate in the offseason how everyone just decided to up and leave in the same year. So, I mean, I can't really see this down year as, his fault entirely, at least. So I think releasing him's a bit rash right now.
I do agree. I just want to say that no amount of money would have kept those players there. They wanted out, so it's not really his fault.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think most of them probably did. Yeah, but the fault on this one, in my opinion, it's squarely on Marcel Desjardins, their GM, because he did lowball all of those players, and some say that's why they left. So if there's someone to point the finger at here, it's not Rick Campbell or his coaching staff, it's the general manager. But they've dug this hole for themselves. They have to dig themselves out next year.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so second question here we have about that game. So, is Ottawa the worst team in the league now, even though they have more wins than BC and Toronto?
I definitely think so. It seems like Ottawa got lucky at the start of the year, and they're not a good team. Like BC, their first win doesn't really count. They kind of won by technicality, but I mean they put up 29 last week. So no, I think they're definitely worse. And Toronto has a lot going for them. They just have to get the wins.
Yeah, I think Ottawa's the worst team right now. You look at the beginning of the year, and it was like, Toronto's doing, they're not doing great. BC is also not doing great. And so everyone was sort of looking at Ottawa through the rose tinted glasses, sort of seeing like, oh, okay, in comparison, they're not bad. But now everyone's sort of figuring it out, except Ottawa. They've pretty much done the opposite.
So is it possible to be a three-way tie? No, I'm
No.
kidding. I think
No, no.
I think they're all terrible, but I must say, I put Toronto ahead of BC as well as Ottawa. But man, I think them and BC are right there. I feel like BC's just as bad, but I think they're both equally terrible. Okay, how about that?
That's
Yeah.
fair.
I would say if I had to rank those three teams right now, I'd put Toronto on the top of the three of the dumpster fire power rankings. And then we go BC after that because it looks like their O line finally is starting to figure it out after 14 weeks. They're slow learners,
Yep.
but they figured it out. And Ottawa is definitely hashtag dead ass last Derek Taylor. But yeah, they're by far the worst of those teams. And then yeah, BC looked good, but is that only because they're against Ottawa, or are they actually improving? Do you guys think?
I think it's part of it. Like they did play well. They scored 29 points, and I mean you have to do something to put up that many points. But I think we'll see in the coming weeks. They play Ottawa this week, but they play Montreal the week after, and then they play Toronto. So I think their true colors will show over the next couple weeks.
Yeah, it's really hard to say with I really wanted to see BC play a different team this week because, they're starting to get some success. Is this the real deal? Well, we're gonna have to see them play the trash bags again, so who knows? And I
Well,
mean that's it.
I honestly think this game was a fluke. I think Ottawa wins. I think Ottawa might win this next one. Just because, man, I hate to bring this up, but like, look what happened to the Bombers and Sask after the Banjo Bowl.
No.
Winnipeg came back and crushed them. This could be the case. It's anything can happen, but it's tough to say because these teams both suck.
True.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but the first game wasn't as this game wasn't as, close as the Labor Day Classic was between Sask and Winnipeg.
That's true.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Their O line is just a bunch of pylon.
Oh man, where do I go with this one? I think BC's getting better. Do I think they're a good team? No, but I'm saying they're definitely getting better because we saw improvement of their O line the game before this, and they continued to build on it this week with Riley. I don't think he got sacked once. I think he only really got hit during the Duron Carter touchdown. So I think they're improving, but they're still in the dumpster fire power ranking tier, in my opinion. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally
Mhm.
think so.
Should make that a thing. We got the real power rankings and the dumpster fire.
Oh
power
my god,
rankings.
yes.
I think that's a little tough in a 9-team league.
That's true.
But,
Maybe
I'm
when we get
down
to
with
10.
it. I'm down
I
Maybe
with
we
mean,
it.
get the Atlantic Schooners in here.
It's clearly not tough because we all know who's in which league.
True.
Yeah.
Alright, now moving on. Would Ottawa be better off sticking with Jonathan Jennings, or do you think they should go back to Dominic Davis, or even give their third string a try next game?
I think you still have to put a show on for your fans, and I think Jennings is your best option. Like Dominic just couldn't play when he was actually playing, and while Jennings may not be getting the wins, he is throwing for 250 yards, running for some yards. So I think he's your best option right now. And then I think later in the year, when it's absolutely impossible to make the playoffs, then I think you throw your third string in just for some game time.
Okay, yeah, I get that. I was sort of wondering where you're going with that, but yeah, because I was kind of starting to think like, is it time to put the third string in? Do we know who that is? Because I
It's,
honestly don't.
his last name's Arndt. Can't remember his first
Yeah,
name.
Will
Oh,
Arndt?
okay, yeah.
I guess you could say he's aren't a very good quarterback, but
Oh, dang.
sorry, y'all. Sorry.
That was great. That was awesome.
Okay, his first
Are
name's
you
Will.
sure?
Okay, his first name's Will Arndt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I could see them sticking with Jennings right now. I think that makes the most sense. But yeah, I mean, once they're fully eliminated, because it probably won't be too long now with the crossover being in effect and everything, and Montreal's, probably making a case for that second position.
Oh yeah.
I can see them putting Arndt
Yeah.
in for a couple of games. Just get him some game time.
I suppose it might be a little early to be thinking about next year, it being September, but I think you got to stick with Jennings because Dom Davis cannot get it done. Well, neither can, but I suppose Jennings has the higher upside. I'm not exactly
I would
sure.
say, yeah, Jennings has a better
Great
upside.
way to put it.
Because Davis
I
is
mean-
29, Jennings is 26, 27, so Jennings is also younger.
Yeah.
And he's had success in the
And I
league.
mean-
He's thrown for 5,000 yards. Dom Davis can't say
Yeah,
that.
he's just
True.
got to get back to that.
Go for it.
I mean, in Ottawa's case, I think it is time for them to start looking at next season. So
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Alright, so moving on. And then congratulations for, again, the BC Lions allowing 0 sacks. Wow. Who would have thought
it's
that
a
would
miracle.
happen this year?
That Renfro trade with Calgary was a nice
That
one.
was. Will BC play spoiler for any teams that are bound for the playoffs, do you guys think?
I think that they'll still fall to the really good teams. Like that Montreal at BC game in a couple weeks will be really tough for them, and then they play Edmonton and Saskatchewan after that. So they could, but I don't see it happening. Those other teams are a little better than that.
I honestly think if it's going to happen to one team, I feel like they're honestly just gonna screw Edmonton, and they're gonna keep Edmonton locked in sort of that fourth place, still crossing over, but they're not gonna get any conversation of cracking into like the top two in the West.
I agree with
Good point.
I do agree with the Edmonton statement, only because Edmonton has this thing where they start off very strong every year, then they slowly peter out to say winning one game, then losing two, then winning one. You know what I mean? They fade near
True.
the end, and I think they could easily do that.
Well, and we still don't know how long Trevor Harris is going to be out either. So
Exactly,
Yeah.
yeah. I think if BC is going to play spoiler, I think it's going to be in that game against Edmonton for sure. 'Cause Edmonton's definitely on the downtrend, and with BC's O-line improving, it could be interesting.
hey, hot take. Maybe they go on a little winning streak somehow and take Edmonton's
Ooh.
spot.
Oh, no
No.
way!
That's a bit too hot there.
Yeah, that's a bit.
I
That's
don't like-
extra spicy. We take mild
Yeah.
spice takes. Come on, Taylor.
That was good because Kilgore is dude.
Oh, that's true. If you look at his numbers when he
I mean-
played in Toronto, he was brutal.
2-10.
I mean, to be honest though, if you are taking today's Edmonton versus today's BC, it is a bit of a toss-up.
Yeah, it is
Like,
yeah.
definitely. I would not argue that.
Like I could
Yeah.
understand. I personally, I would still take Edmonton, but you could argue both sides.
Yeah,
Oh,
you know what?
definitely.
You know what I love hearing every time I watch an Edmonton broadcast? This team has got the best defensive line. Well, your wins sure don't show it.
Saskatchewan is staring at you with a certain look on them right now.
And
Yeah.
Winnipeg's
Yeah.
laughing.
Yeah.
So on to the second game of the week, where Calgary won the game in a nail biter, 19-18 at McMahon. Now, guys, was it me or did Bo not look good during that game?
Might be you a little bit. He still threw for 342 yards, so got his team to win. I mean, he only had one touchdown, so he's not a like a 4 touchdown a game
Yeah.
guy. He's the best at winning games, and he does it how he can.
I mean, yeah, he's definitely not a detriment to the team. He's like when you add him to the team, he's a plus. But I mean, he's not what I don't think he's what he used to be. I think he's starting to decline. I don't know how many years he has left.
Well, I suppose being a Calgary fan, I've been spoiled for so many years with Bo that I think that this was kind of a step back for him this game, but I don't think he's taking a decline. I think teams are starting to figure him out, if that makes sense.
That's
Yeah.
possible. It could also be that he's still recovering from the injury too. He might not have all of his arm strength back, but
Yeah,
what I
exactly.
s-
No
Yeah.
doubt, yeah.
like what I saw was just his accuracy seemed a bit off in the first half. Like he was missing guys left, right, and center. It's like what?
Well, they couldn't get in the end
Yeah,
zone.
and Bo's like
Yeah.
key guy for accuracy in the league now that Ricky Ray is gone. So it's just like, yeah, it just seemed very uncharacteristic to me.
I think Calgary has a tough decision this offseason. Like, he does have a big salary, so you dump him and stick with Nick Arbuckle, or keep him around and get rid of Nick?
Or do you let Bo explore the NFL again and roll with Nick?
Yes, exactly.
These are hot takes, but then again, my man Huffnagel got rid of 2 guys that were still very much contributors to 2 teams, like Nick Lewis and Charleston Hughes. So that is
And
not
Micah
a shocking.
Johnson.
Yeah.
Yes, Micah Johnson. It's not a shocking take, but that man's wanted too much money.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true, and we gave it to
Yeah,
him.
true. I mean, Bo isn't making as much as Mike Riley. I think Bo's making it in the 700,000 range, and Mike Riley's making over 800. So
Yeah, that makes sense.
yeah, both are. Those aren't great. Those aren't great salaries to have in a league like the CFL, but it has a bit of detriment to Calgary as much as it has been to BC. So I don't know.
Oh yeah.
But also, Bo's a game manager. I use the term lightly because sometimes that can be
I don't think
has
that.
negative connotations.
Oh, Matt Nichols.
I don't
think
like
he's
how
not
that
gonna-
has an.
I don't think he's gonna throw it. He's not one of these dudes who throws tons of picks. Rather, like he makes not stupid decisions like other
Yeah.
dudes will.
Like Bo, he I don't know. I compare him more to Ricky Ray than a Matt Nichols. You know, he's a pocket passer who's accurate. He's got actual arm strength. Ricky Ray wasn't really known for that though. So that's why it's like, you know, I see him as more of a Ricky Ray type where it's just he's an accurate passer. He's not going to use his legs on you. He's not going to beat you that way, but
No.
he's going to beat you with his arm.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, because Nichols does not throw for as many yards as this man.
Oh, and Bo is not scared to throw it deep. I know Nichols, some of the
Yeah.
statistics show him that he isn't afraid to toss that ball either, but yardage wise for Bo,
Well,
you know.
Well, I think I think like Nichols isn't afraid to throw it, but when you look at just a head-to-head comparison between Bo and Nichols, it's clearly Bo's side.
Oh yeah, that's why I said Bo is more of a Ricky Ray than Matt Nichols in my opinion.
Yeah, I get that.
Side note: Bo Levi's contract is a 4-year contract worth almost $3 million.
Okay,
Yikes!
So like he's making $675 this year, and at the fourth year he'll make $725.
dang, that's a lot.
So not too bad.
So I guess this is another question that some of us are asking: is how does Hamilton keep winning without Mazzoli QB?
Well, that's what I'm wondering too, especially with them kind of rotating running backs. Like Anthony Coombs is the starter, but you give the ball to Brandon Banks 4 times and Braylon Addison 3 times, and it amazes me that they're winning the way they are. But I think it's in part to their defense. I think Calgary, they're just a better team this week.
Yeah, you know who I think's hating this a ton right now? Montreal fans and Montreal Alouettes players.
Oh god, yeah.
Just seeing Hamilton, they're just like a skeleton crew of what they should be, and they're just like, and they keep getting. Well, I don't know if skeleton crew is the right word, but they're still winning, and Montreal's still got like a good core together, and it's like they just can't catch up because Hamilton won't let them.
That's a good take.
Or yeah, that is. Or this is one other thing I think. Or is Masoli really that good, or was it the team lifting him up?
Ooh,
Yeah.
That's
a hot
That's
take.
a hot take. That's a hot take, but we take those now.
We're going from mild to spicy takes here, guys.
Because that's a stud defense, and they got a pretty solid offensive line that's keeping this man upright.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, yeah, and you have Brandon Banks out there, and Luke Tasker, and Addison, and Acklin, and yeah, like he's got a lot of targets and stuff. So yeah, that's a really good point.
I wonder what would happen if you put Masoli on this year's Alouettes. Like if you put a healthy Masoli on this year's Alouettes.
He's a similar quarterback to VA, so I don't think it would hurt them that much. A better question, I think, would be what it would happen if you put Dane Evans on Montreal. Now that's a very different story, in my opinion.
That would be a better way to tell.
Like Dane Evans would not have the success in Montreal at all, I don't think. All right, So has Dane finally proven worthy of being more involved in their offense with Hamilton now?
Yes and no. He's proving to be manageable. I mean, they're still winning games. They've only lost 3 games, so he's doing pretty well. But I wouldn't be looking to sign him as a starter if my quarterback went.
Yeah, I mean, I think that he can get more involved in the offense. I mean, Masoli's not coming back this year. You might as well make do with what you got. He's winning your games at least, and when in the games that he's not winning, they're close. Like he's not getting blown out a ton at least. No.
I think he's one of these bubble guys who people are scared to give him starter money if he does make it to the market, because he already has a pretty good contract now. I feel like he's like how Jonathan Jennings was, is he capable of being a full-time starter elsewhere besides just a relief guy? Or how people saw Dom Davis, it's kind of up in the air because it's one season. He could be a one-hit one.
That's true because
yeah.
Taylor, did you not say you thought of him as a career backup?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Still do?
Like yeah. Oh yeah, like I said, I would not put him, like if he was a free agent and I needed a quarterback, I'm not looking his way.
Yeah, I would definitely be looking more at Mazzoli or Vernon Adams in this free agent crop of quarterbacks. But
yeah,
for me, I think he's done well. He's thrown for over 300 twice in a row. So I think I'm more confident in his quarterbacking skills, especially because those games were against, one of them was against Calgary, which is that defense is no slouch, especially Trey Roberson.
Yeah,
Yeah.
going back to that QB thing, I just want to ask, if you were a GM making your own team, you have a quarterback situation going into this free agency, do you take Masoli, Nichols, or Strebler?
Neither. I'm taking Vernon Adams. I'm throwing everything in the kitchen sink at
Oh,
Vernon Adams.
I would either, but durability is definitely a factor. Masoli is not a big guy. I know people say that doesn't matter in the CFL, but he's only 5'11". He can only take so much punishment, and
Oh yeah.
he tore his ACL, which is like major. Not as
yeah.
bad as tearing your Achilles, but still pretty
Yeah.
bad.
And then last question here for this game: will Calgary take first in the CFL or in the West Division at least?
I think so. Everyone kind of doubts Calgary, and I mean, I even have my doubts about them this year too. But they do that every year, and I think they'll take first place for sure.
You say that Calgary has some doubters, and I'm still one of them. I don't think at the moment that they will. They've beaten subpar Edmonton twice, and they barely scraped by Hamilton. So I just want to see them play. I want to see them play Saskatchewan. I want to see them do their back-to-back against Winnipeg. I know that's keeping it till late, but I feel like those games are going to be really important.
Man, though I'm a Calgary fan, I'm probably Bo's biggest doubter and the team's biggest doubter. But every year they prove me wrong. So I'm gonna say they do finish first place, even though I don't think they will. They're just gonna because I always doubt them.
For me, Calgary's still the gold standard of the CFL. Even though the Bombers in the regular season right now are killing it, I think that all the teams are going to experience the wrath of Bo in these next coming weeks, and I think, yeah, it's just I think they're going to get back to that number one spot in the league, or at least the West Division. Hamilton's got a very easy schedule, so maybe they take the whole league overall. But I think Calgary squeaks it out and just beats Winnipeg for first in the West Division.
Yeah, me too.
So on to the final game of the week here. It was a shootout between Montreal and Saskatchewan, where Saskatchewan came out 27-25 with last-minute heroics again from Brett Lowther. Now, guys, did the Riders prove they can beat a top team when fully healthy?
Oh yeah, I absolutely think so. I think they could go against any team in the league and win. I think they could go against any team in the league and lose, but I think they have a better chance at winning.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that Saskatchewan, I've always had an idea that they're one of the better teams in the league. I mean, ever since they got past that poor start. But yeah, I mean, on any given day, any team can beat any team in this league. But I think, yeah, Saskatchewan are certainly favorites when it comes to majority of those matchups.
I do agree. I do see them definitely as a top 3 or 4 team in the league. I just feel like it's football. And you win some, you lose some. Anything can happen, and I do think when they're healthy, they are the more scarier teams to face.
Yeah, it's true. I think Saskatchewan right now they're on the cusp of probably there's a tier we talked about the dumpster fire tier earlier on in the show, but I think there's like you got your top teams and your mid-tier teams and then the dumpster fire. And I think the Riders are just on the cusp of being one of those elite teams. So yeah, they can
Yeah,
really I think beat
Well,
anybody.
who would you put as the elite
The
teams right
elite
now?
teams, I have
Calgary.
Calgary at Winnipeg right now and Hamilton. And the
I think you got
Saskatchewan
to
Okay.
can
throw
be there
Hamilton in there.
some
Yeah.
weeks and then some weeks they won't. It just depends on how they show
Okay, I
up.
get that. Yeah.
And then so, do you guys think Saskatchewan won that game or did Montreal lose it?
I think Saskatchewan won the game. I mean, it was the second week in a row where they had a game heroic, like a last minute drive to win the game. 2 weeks in a row for Brett Lowther, or sorry, two games for him. But yeah, no, I think they won that, and Montreal just couldn't stop them in the end.
Yeah, I think the key to beating Saskatchewan is you gotta take them down super early and just eliminate any chance of a comeback. Because if you leave that door open, they're gonna kick it down. So
I
I,
think their play styles are very different in that I find Montreal's very fast and they blow their load, so to speak, in that they peter out very fast near the end.
Yeah.
And Saskatchewan comes on strong at the end, and I think that Saskatchewan won it, not the other way, and then Montreal lost it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Saskatchewan, what a way to win on the anniversary of the '89 Grey Cup, where Ridgway hits a field goal to seal it, and we see a similar end in this game. But yeah, I think Saskatchewan won that game. Montreal was in it, credit to them the whole way, but the great teams can manufacture drives at the end of games to win it. And right now, it looks like the Riders are, one of those teams that can do that. So I'm going to say they won that game. Now, speaking of that field goal, is Lowler the most clutch field goal kicker in the CFL right now?
I think he's one of them. Like he definitely deserves to be in that elite group. And I don't know if anybody else saw, but the TSN came out with their kicker rankings, and he didn't even make the top
Oh,
7.
yeah, we're going to get to that.
I
Don't
think,
worry.
yeah, I think that's an injustice.
Yeah.
So, no, I think he's one of the most clutch kickers. I don't know about the most. Like Justin Medlock's pretty good, and I mean Lewis Ward's pretty good. So I'd put him up there for sure, though, like top 3.
I mean, it pains me to say this because, I am a big Bomber fan, but I don't think Medlock, at least this season, is as clutch. Just because he hasn't needed to put on those, game-winning kicks, because he usually has to do that once or twice a season. I don't think he's had to once this year, so right now, just because of, the amount of times that Lawler's had to do that, I think he's probably one of, if not the most clutch kicker in the league right now.
I'd say he's one of the most clutch kickers, but not one of the best. I suppose he shows up in big moments when it matters. That's why he's super clutch. Not that he's always on top of it.
I agree with that.
Yeah, good point.
For me, I think he is the most clutch kicker in the league. He's not the best kicker, but he's the most clutch, in my opinion. Now,
who would you guys have as the best?
It's
sorry.
Okay. Yeah, we can talk about that before I move on.
Yeah. Who would you just say is the best?
Ooh, I would say it's Lewis Ward.
Yeah. I agree with that. I think it has to be, though. 69 consecutive field goals.
Well, that discounts the 2 he missed in the playoffs, so I don't give that number much credence, but he's definitely probably been the most accurate kicker over the last 2 years. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but he's definitely up there.
Yeah, like I'd put him up there, but Sean White's pretty clutch, and you don't really hear anything bad about Rob Maver. Like he's just
That's
quiet,
true.
but he's consistent, so nobody.
I know, and
talks
Rob's a
about him.
punter too, right? It's usually if you're talking about
Yeah,
special teams,
exactly.
you're talking about the place kicker.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I do agree. Yeah, he's one of the best at the coffin corners, I suppose, Maver, but punters don't get no love in these
That's
streets.
true.
That's true.
And then, so Taylor alluded to this. We're going to talk about, we've been having some hot takes on this show right now, but this is a really, really bad one from TSN. Like, this isn't hot. This is like whatever the inverse is. A cold take? A frozen take? So, they ranked the top 7 most valuable legs in the CFL. Number 1, they got Lewis Ward. Number 2, they got Sean White. 3, Rob Maver. 4, Sergio Castillo. Number 5, Justin Medlock. 6, Richie Leone. And 7, Liram Haralahu. Now guys, we just talked about Lowther. He's arguably one of the most clutch kickers in the league. Does he deserve to be on this list?
More than maybe some of these guys on here. Like he absolutely deserves to be on there, and he deserves to be, I think, in the top 3, 4 at the least.
I mean that list. When you read that off to me, I was just like my jaw dropped at just not even like the fact of Lawler's absence, but the way that some of the the way that the rest of the list is, like I don't understand just some of these positionings on that. I understand Ward first, Sean White second, right? That's what you have.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess, but I don't know. Maybe that's just like me showing salt because Medlock's 5th, but I don't know. I just feel like that's a weird order.
At least your kicker made the list.
Who is Hey,
Fair enough.
My kicker didn't either. But who's at 4th? Right now?
Number 4 is Sergio Castillo.
That's BC.
Yep.
I just
Okay.
don't like the name, so let's get him out of there.
Dang. I actually like Sergio Castillo.
Yeah, he's a good
Yeah.
guy.
All right, so for me, if I had to put Lowther in, which I think we all agree should be on this list, and take a player out, who would you take out?
I think Sergio Castillo probably. I mean, he's not helping them win much this year. You know, like he's kicking extra points maybe a couple times a game, but you know, he's not doing a lot. So I'd take him off.
I get where you're coming from. Like, he's a good kicker, but yeah, I mean, the team's not giving him much to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, his sample size is very small this season. I suppose you
true.
can't really. I suppose you can't really get much deviation from that on how good he is, considering he's barely kicking. So I suppose your team's got to score a little more if you want to get on there, pal.
I would move Rob Maver down a little bit. I'm keeping Castillo and Medlock on. I am going to take off Richie Leone and put Lowther at probably number 3. Because that's not a diss at Leone. He's a great punter, but that's all he does. It's the same thing for Lewis Ward. Lewis Ward doesn't do kickoffs.
Yeah.
So it's just, you could argue to move him down, but I wouldn't.
Yeah, I don't like the name either.
Yeah, I wouldn't
I
either.
wouldn't either, but
I don't like the
Luke
name
Molitor
either,
talked
so
about,
get him off
he
there.
only does one role, which I found interesting. But yeah, for me, it's Richie Leone. It's just, I don't know, 2 punters on that list. Again, I don't know. Lowther for sure deserves to be on there. Thuram Haralahu has been great, so I can't take him off in good faith. I said I like Sergio Castillo. Justin Medlock, can't take Justin Medlock off. Sean White's underrated as heck. Nobody talks about him. And then Rob Maver, best punter in the league, and Lewis Ward's the best place kicker. So yeah, Lowther at number 3 for me. And then, where do you guys think Saskatchewan will finish in the West this season by the end of things?
I think 2 or 3. It just kind of depends what happens with Calgary and Winnipeg. Like, in my opinion, Calgary will take first, and Winnipeg will start to fall. Sorry, Carter, but
My heart.
Yeah, I think second or third, and it really it just depends what happens with Winnipeg.
Carter, you were saying?
Yeah. I'll go on the record here. This is probably going to make me look really dumb in a few weeks, but this is my hot take. I don't think Saskatchewan will be hosting a playoff game this season.
Ooh.
Another
hot take.
Because I think Winnipeg can usually, like the really late games, Winnipeg can usually get a couple of wins there, and it's hard to see, with Calgary on the rise, and I think Winnipeg will slow down, but I don't think they'll fall as hard as you're expecting them to.
Fair enough.
That's why I think it's either going to be Winnipeg, Calgary, Sask, or Calgary, Winnipeg. Hopefully I didn't list the same thing twice.
Yeah.
You're good.
Okay, good.
For me, it's just... Ooh. Oh yeah, Taylor, what were you going to say?
No, I'm good.
What about you, James?
Well, what do I think?
Yeah.
Hot take here, but Winnipeg's going first to third. I'll tell you that much. And Sask is going to be second, and Calgary's going to be back on top, baby. Dynasty, I tell you.
I actually agree with James 100%. I think Winnipeg falls. And Saskatchewan goes into that number 2 spot.
I think it just shows how strong the West side is and that what those 3 teams are, because you could literally argue any combination from first
Honestly,
to third.
yeah. My one question I've always wondered is, why is the West so strong when compared to the East right now?
I don't know, and it makes me mad.
Does anyone have a theory on that here?
I don't know if this is a theory, but I just find people, the give a poo level, like people care way more in the West about football, and that attracts the people who are from the States, the players rather, because they want to be playing in front of big crowds, not like in Toronto where you're playing in front of 17 people.
Well, what irritates me about it is that, before the Red Blacks came in, that was sort of like, as soon as the Red Blacks came in, that's when the Bombers sort of started to kick it up into gear and start making the playoffs again. We would have had first locked up for like 4 years in a row, essentially, if we were still in the East right now. So like maybe this year we wouldn't get it, but like every year before we would have had first locked up if we were still in the East.
Yeah, pretty much. Because I think last year the first team was close to 500. They were just a little bit over in the East. So
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it wasn't
It's
good
like that
records
every
last
year.
It was the top
Oh,
three
yeah.
teams in the West would have finished first in the East if they
Oh,
were in
yeah.
the East.
But yeah, I think you're right, James. I think it's the people who want to play in front of crowds, the people that actually care. But how do you get people in those big cities to care? My question.
Uh, I don't know. Maybe start them out in football young.
Oh,
Well,
Like playing it,
see,
like playing it to start them young, because just from playing in the football out west, it's just like when I played. For people who don't know, I played college football out here in Toronto. I just like when I played juniors in Calgary, our crowds were tripled the size, and it was a CJFL team compared to a college team. And the college I go to has 60,000 people, and we barely draw a crowd. It's people don't know anything about football out here.
I think another thing too about that is we talked about this off air, but let's say for Toronto, for example, you got $100. Are you going to spend it on a Raptor ticket, a Blue Jay ticket, a Leaf ticket, or an Argo ticket?
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I know they're not all at the same time, but not everyone can afford to go to games all year. So are you going to spend your summer going to Toronto Argo games or checking out other stuff? So I think they just have a lot to compete with in some of these cities. Like BC too, not that they have many other major sporting teams there besides like the Canucks, but there's just so much other stuff going on there, and a lot of people don't care about it.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but that's the way it is.
Shout out to Winnipeg and Saskatchewan for having pretty much nothing else. I mean, Winnipeg's got the Jets, but besides that, we have nothing.
Oh man, I lived in Winnipeg for a bit too, and I know they love their Jets and they're loyal to their Bombers, so I got to give them mad respect there. But yeah, they have in Ottawa they have the Senators and the Red Blacks, and the Red Blacks are doing great right now. So shout out to Ottawa for being the team in the East that has a major team in their city, but their fans still show up.
Yeah, good point.
The only thing I think that could draw more people is I've been saying this since grade 8. The CFL needs a video game. Like a real video game.
Oh,
Yeah,
Not a crappy mobile
Yeah,
game.
100%.
I heard Randy Ambrosi was doing those town halls and somebody asked him.
I asked him.
Oh, it was you?
Yeah, I asked him if he was going to make a game.
Oh,
And he said they had an esports expert in Toronto tell them that they should just stick to their CFL Frenzy app for
my
now.
God.
Or for a
That
while.
expert needs to get his
Which
head
is-
checked. Because you know what kids grew up playing? They grow up playing Madden. And those
Exactly.
kids
You
go on
don't-
to be huge
esports-
NFL fans, and a lot of them that I know, they don't care about the CFL. And you know why? It's because they grew up playing the Madden football games. So they got to know the NFL players, the teams, and you don't have that with the CFL. And the problem with mobile games is they're so casual. They're not meant for like actual
Exactly.
gamers. You know what I mean?
Well, it's like
Exactly, yeah.
I feel like you shouldn't take like when you look in the esports scene. I'm a big esports guy. I just love to watch it and that. The sports teams and that they're starting to get more involved into it, but besides the NBA 2K League, Madden's done essentially nothing really for advertisement. MLB even less so, in my opinion. So it's like getting an esports rep to tell you if you should make a video game. I don't think that's the best move.
Well, and you look at like the NHL franchise with EA, they have the WHL and all these leagues in Europe, but why can't Madden even get an add-on of the CFL and then throw in the arena leagues too or something?
True.
Like,
It's 9 teams. It's
Yeah.
not that difficult to do.
exactly.
One in the WHL, I'm not sure how many teams there are, but I'm positive there's way more
Yeah,
than
and
9.
EA, it's not like they're headquartered in the United States. They have headquarters or divisions in Canada too. So it's not like they
Exactly.
can't have
Montreal.
like a couple staff be like, "Hey, pay attention to the CFL and change the ratings, every couple of weeks." And I know
Well,
EA is a greedy company. I don't think anyone here is under any kind of illusion with that. They've been voted worst company in America for several years, but yeah, hey, it's
Oof.
true. But even if they want to make it so there's a financial incentive for them, make it a paid DLC. Like, hey, 10, $20,
yeah.
you can have the Canadian Football League. I would pay. I
Exactly.
would pay for that. Because I
Oh,
always get the
absolutely,
standard edition with
happily.
games. I don't buy the digital
Mhm.
deluxe or anything like that. I usually just get the vanilla version. So
And I
if
also feel that would like intrigue
it
Americans.
could, because Americans are like, oh man, it's the same game every year. But if it's like, hey, there's this new game, the CFL has new rules, different stuff, blah blah. The Americans are like, okay, I'll try this out as a change of pace, and they might like it, and
Yeah,
they might
three.
start following it.
Yeah.
It'd also be
Yes.
fun. It'd also be fun at an ultimate team. You get people from different leagues playing on the same team. You could have Tom Brady handing it off to Andrew Harris. Got stuff like
Oh
that
my
happening.
goodness,
That'd
that'd
be
be
fun.
amazing if they could cross that over. But I feel like that'd be difficult with ratings to just balance them.
Well,
Like, I
yeah.
think you would have to have
That's
like
true.
a CFL, and then they'd have their own ratings. And if they went over to the NFL, they'd have to create an algorithm to drop the rating a certain amount depending on aspects. What's kind of valued more?
Yeah, that's one thing. Yeah, I feel like a bunch of NFL fans would be very angry, rightfully so, if a CFL quarterback is like slashing every defense.
Yeah, that's true. So they'd have to figure out an algorithm for that if they were gonna have it so it could cross over. But
Yeah, but you still got to make it playable
yeah,
too.
but
It's a
for me,
hard
yeah,
thing to do.
it's not like EA hasn't built a working CFL modification into Madden. They did it in 2013. It wasn't released, but they made one. So it's not
Oh,
like
I
it
was
can't be
about to
done.
say
It's been
Exactly.
what?
done. You know?
I was about to say I'm gonna pick up Madden 13.
Oh,
But let's shout out Maximum Football, the Doug Flutie Maximum's football game that
Yes.
comes out in September this month on the 27th. They're making a Canadian football game. Can't use the teams or the stadiums per se. They make them look a little different, but it's the closest thing we have right now.
Yeah, go show support. Go pick it
yeah,
up.
that's true. Yeah, go check them out and prove to Randy Ambrosi that there is a demand for a CFL video game.
That's why I buy it every year.
I bought the first one, but I haven't bought another one, so I'll have to look at it. But
The second one was better than the first
okay,
one,
good.
but the third one here looks like it's going to be a big step up for them.
Oh well, that's good. But for me, it's just I don't get how Randy Ambrosi can sit there and say, we don't need a CFL video game when that's why you're losing all these kids. You want to get young kids into it? Get a video game. Kids play video games, Like, it's just...
Well, and you want to spread the game globally, and that's a good way to do it. That's a way a lot of people are connected in the world.
True. Like, yeah, everybody games, And, yeah, it's true. Like, I wouldn't know some teams if I hadn't picked up NHL and been like, hey, look at all these teams in the WHL. I wouldn't know half of these if I didn't, go in...
Well,
if they weren't in
exactly.
that game.
Like, yeah, I remember watching NFL but not really paying attention, but then playing the games and seeing like the cool players like Michael Vick, and my favorite was Jeremy Shockey back in the day.
Oh,
So
yeah.
yeah,
But yeah, same. It's the same as CFL. Like, if kids can go and be like, hey, there's the league from my country. There's the CFL, And they go play that, and they're like, oh, this is really fun. This is really good. I want to go see this live. And then they go to the
exactly.
games. They follow the league. Like, I don't see how this can be a disadvantage to the league.
I totally agree with you.
So now we get on to CFL Fantasy. Now, for the recap notes here, the only thing I'm going to say is stay away from Ottawa players because Jennings did not look good last game. He had a good game, though, 2 weeks ago. But yeah, I would stay away from him this next game and see if that was just a fluke or not. Now, I'm going to move on to value picks, where you guys tell me if I miss somebody who's 3,500 below and might be a decent pick. So for value picks right now, I have Nate Bahar at 2,500, Jonathan Huff at 2,500, and Chris Matthews at just over 2,900.
I think you did got some pretty good picks there. Is it 3,500 or
It's
3,000?
3,500 and below.
Okay, well, I think Jackson Bennett for Hamilton is a not bad pick. I mean, he hasn't been consistent, but if you're looking for a cheap running back because you're stacked at quarterback and receiver, he's not a bad option to take.
Yeah, I think you got most of the I think you got all the good ones there for cheap. Um, yeah, can't really add much to that. Still sort of wrapping my head around fantasy, so I'm not going to add anything that could be false. So
I'm going to be quite frank. I'm not the biggest CFL fantasy guy, so I'm going to have to take your word for it,
All
pal.
right, all right. Well, for me, it's the reason I don't have Bennett on there, Taylor, is because I don't know what Hamilton is going to do on their running back situation week to week. Like, half the time their depth chart isn't right, so it's just
Oh, yeah,
it,
exactly. Like, who knows what they're actually going
yeah.
to do?
Like the only way I'm picking is if you're in that Hamilton locker room or you somehow got a source tells you 100% who their running back's going to be that week. Otherwise, I'm steering clear of that situation. That's why I only have those three on there.
Fair enough.
Now we get to the best positional picks for each position, and you guys tell me if I missed somebody. So for the two quarterback options for this week, the only two that I see that are worth taking are Mike Riley and Zach Evans. Do you guys think there's another guy that it could potentially be picked this week?
At 9,300, I am picking Bo Levi Mitchell. He's going up against Toronto's defense. It's in Toronto, but that doesn't really matter. So, yeah, no, I'm taking Bo. I like your picks, but yeah, I think Bo's a safe pick. He's expensive, but he's safe.
I think you could make a case for taking Chris Strebler because if he does as well as he did last week, it's like I've heard some people be like saying it's like having a QB and a running back in the same position because if he can be accurate, then that's a really good pick for only 7,500. So that's what I think. I'm not going with him, but I could understand if somebody would.
I'm gonna have to go with Vernon Adams. I think this man's gonna have a solid game this coming up week. I'm putting all my money on him. Okay, guys. Don't take anything I say with a grain. Take everything I say rather with a grain of salt.
When it comes to
I
fantasy,
don't
yeah.
play CFL fantasy, so don't. Okay, I'm sorry, guys.
Yeah,
No,
it's
it's
fine.
okay. He's just expensive.
Well, the reason I'm staying away from Vernon Adams is, that price, and his matchup is against a very, very elite Winnipeg pass defense that could potentially stop a lot of the pass game. So you might see a lot from Stanback, actually, my opinion. Even though Montreal
I
does
also
have some weapons, Winnipeg, they locked down Saskatchewan pretty well, and Saskatchewan I think they're pretty comparable compared to the weapons they have. So,
I have Montreal with the upset.
oh, okay.
But
That's
that's
a
just me.
that's a
That's
hot
just me.
take.
That's just a hot take. I have this gut feeling. I'll tell you
Yeah,
that
like
much.
for me, Stanback is just too big of a risk for his price. Bo is a great real life quarterback, but he's never been a good fantasy quarterback.
Yeah,
So
100%.
I am tempted to just stay away, even though he's playing Toronto. Again, he's expensive. Honestly, I'd feel more comfortable taking MBT because he throws touchdowns more than I would Bo, even though Bo is definitely a better
That's
QB.
fair.
But his price has gone up now. He's over
Yeah.
10K.
Yeah, he's a
10,000.
10K quarterback. I just looked and saw that number. Still, I'd be more confident with him than Bo this week. So, I think Mike Riley,
Yeah, fair
just
enough.
because of matchup, he's a great option. And then Dane Evans, if you're looking for some lineup flexibility, he's going up against Edmonton defense that is on the downtrend. So, it's a good option to consider. Now, we're going to move on to running backs here. For the running backs I have to consider, I have James Wilder. I know, hot take. At just over 9,900. William Stanback at 7,600. Kadeem Carey at 5,300. And Brandon Rutley. Hold on, find his price.
51 or
Yep,
$5,011.
$5,011. Now, guys, did I miss anybody there, or would you take someone off?
No, I think you hit it right on the head. I got Rutley and Carey in my lineup, and I would have picked Stanback, but just against that Winnipeg defense, I mean, he could get 4 yards like William Powell did. But yeah, I'm taking Rutley and Carey, so those would be my picks.
I mean, it's hard to say with having Wilder there, because if you have Wilder there, you could make the case almost to why don't you just shell out the extra 1,000, take Andrew Harris if you think. But I mean, with Andrew Harris playing with Strevler now instead, you don't have Nichols constantly handing him the ball. Strevler's going to take a couple, so I understand that. But yeah, I mean, I think that Stanback and Carey are both very good picks. I have Carey in my lineup, so yeah.
I also think I wouldn't take Wilder playing Calgary, and I know people may think there's a set there, but I think Calgary's gonna, since Bo's back, this is gonna be his game where he show why he's paid that much.
Yeah, that makes sense. For me, I put Wilder on there because he had 3 all-purpose touchdowns last week. So they use him a lot in the red zone, clearly, and he's also a receiving threat. He looked like he found his game when he last played, so I'm taking a hot James Wilder on there as a viable option. I don't have him in my lineup, but I can safely say that he should have a decent week. William Stanback has at 7,600. I think he's a good pick because, like I said, I think Winnipeg will shut down Montreal's pass defense, and they'll have to pound the rock a lot, or they'll have to throw a lot of screens. So that only benefits Stanback. I also have Kadeem Carey against that Toronto defense. I think he's going to have a good game.
Mm-hmm.
So for receivers, we have a good amount of receivers you could consider picking this week. We have Brian Burnham. I wasn't on that train last week, but I am now. At just under 9,700. Braylon Addison at just under 9,200. Eric Rogers at 8,300. Margarant at just over 5,400. Rodney Smith at just over 5,200. Juan Bray at just under 4,500. And Tavon Smith at around 3,500. What do you guys think of those? Are there any receivers you would take otherwise in fantasy?
See, I got 2 that aren't on the list. I went really expensive with Reggie Bagleton at 11,000, and I went really cheap with Deron Carter at 35.
Oh, you're going back to Deron?
Oh, you know it.
All right.
Oh, playing the same team, I think he can do it again.
Ooh, all right. That's an interesting take too. How about you, Carter?
I mean, I think you guys got them all pretty much. Yeah, you got some good guys on there. They're all listed. I've got Tavon Smith in my lineup, so I think it's going to be good. But, yeah, I mean, you got them all.
I don't have much to say, but if I'm not mistaken, Bagleton might be out with a concussion. I'm not exactly.
And I know he finished
I hope not.
He finished the game last week, but yeah, he was injured for a bit there. So if that's a concussion, he could be out. And for a good chunk of that game, he was out and sitting at 8 points. So if there is some trouble there, I want to avoid him this week. Make sure he's fully healthy, and then if he puts up another good game, he'll be back on this list next week. Now,
fair enough.
For team defense people, I just have the BC Lions D as the only D you should consider taking this week. Is there any other defense you guys would consider putting in your lineup?
I think if you're adamant about having a defense, I think Calgary at just over 5,000 isn't a bad pick. They're playing Toronto, and they've been having great games lately. So I think if you like defenses and you make sure you have one, Calgary is a good pick.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, personally, I'm not going with the defense, but I like the BC choice. I also think that there's substance to having Calgary there as well. So yeah, I'm not picking one, but I see where you guys are going.
And James, do you have anything there?
No,
Nope,
not really.
that's
Sorry.
fine. Yeah,
Fair enough.
again, I'm not picking Calgary's defense just because of their price. Just a little bit too much for me. And Toronto, they haven't been throwing a ton of interceptions anymore. They're not that team. And I think BC, they got 15 points last week. Even if they regress a little bit to like 10 points, I think you're winning.
Yeah, good point.
Now we get into the last part of fantasy, our locks for this week. For me, I have Braylon Addison, just under 9,200. He's probably the most consistent receiver in CFL fantasy, and he's a little high priced, but yeah, I still like him at 9,100.
No, I think that's a good one. I'm taking Duron Carter with my lock this week.
Oh,
Yeah, it's a good one. I think
that's
he
your lock.
had his game, and I think he can do it again against them. And I mean, he didn't have the most yards, but who knows? Maybe this is the start of something great between him and Mike Riley.
Yeah, well, speaking of Mike Riley, that's my lock, and coming in at just over 9,500. He dropped 30 against Ottawa this past week. He had 30 points, and I think that, playing against the same team, I'm honestly expecting more of the same. So I think that maybe not 30 points, but I'm talking just in general about the game. I'm expecting it to go around the same, so I'm expecting 25-ish from him.
Well, with mine, I'm going to say carry, because he's going to carry the Stampeders offense this week against Toronto.
Nice.
Nice.
Yeah, that makes sense. Keating Carey, I like that pick, especially against that weak Argo run defense. So, we kick off our first surprise segment, CFL Draft. We are going to be having a segment or show about the draft whenever the rankings come out, and we'll probably have one the week before or a couple days ahead of the CFL Draft. That's why we brought our special guest on this week, James. He plays U Sports football right now. He knows a good amount about the draft, and so do I. So he and I are gonna kind of talk this out. Now, James, you have a list of the top 20 where you reviewed the players. You feel free to elaborate.
Yes, sir. So I'm just going to quickly go through the list of who's on it. At number 1, Neville Gallimore, defensive tackle, Oklahoma. 2, Chase Claypool, wide receiver, Notre Dame. Nathan Rourke, starting quarterback for Ohio University, not Ohio State, but Ohio. That's Sage Doxtator. He has a very weird last name. O-line, New Mexico. Patrice Renee at 5, DB, North Carolina. Dijon Brissett, number 6, wide receiver, Virginia. Kettle Assay, O-line, Laval. At number 7. At number 8, Adam O'Clair, LB, Laval. Number 9, Mason Bennett, defensive end, North Dakota. Number 10, Daniel Joseph, defensive end, Penn State. Number 11, Carter O'Donnell, offensive line, Alberta. Number 12, J.J. Molson, he's a kicker at UCLA. Number 13, Thomas Jack Cardilla, offensive line, Buffalo. Number 14, Brendan O'Leary Orange, wide receiver, Nevada. 15, Mark Anthony DeCoy, DB, Montreal. 16, Dylan Griffin, offensive line, Western. 17, Dev Lamour, DB, Buffalo. And number 18, Adam Sinagre, quarterback, University of Calgary. 19, Tyler Ternowski, wide receiver, Waterloo. And number 20, Jesse Lawson, line. Now that's the top 20 so far. And I guess I can kind of go now if you'd like me to elaborate.
Sure, let's do your review
picks
first, and then I'll get to my questions.
So this is what I first off want to say. Neville, Gallimore, and Chase Claypool will not see the CFL. They may not be first rounders as of right now, but I see them being day 2 guys, second or third round picks, because Claypool's been a long-time starter at Notre Dame and is one of their biggest threats, as well as Neville Gallimore has been a starter just after his freshman year. He became a starter, but he has had a few injury concerns, but these guys, just the way they're playing and the teams are on, they are too good to even sniff the CFL. I don't even think they'll did, or if they are at the end of the draft, only because they are so good.
That-
But then
That's
only
fair. Yeah,
sorry,
that's
continue.
fair. I would say. Just to clarify, you do mean second day of the NFL draft, right?
Yeah, second day of the NFL draft. But for Rourke, I don't see him being drafted in the NFL, but I see him maybe getting a training camp or invite, or even making like a practice squad. But if he does make the CFL, I see him having a extremely long career, because he's been dominant at every level of football he's played, even in the States, being a guy who grew up and played in Canada. Not one of these guys who was born to the States, went NCAA. No, he played in Canada, NCAA. Then Sage isn't really an NFL talent, uh, but easily could be an instant starter with his background. He's a 4-year starting tackle uh, in New Mexico. He's the offensive lineman. But the one thing I do say that hinders his ability is that he's a pure tackle. He's 6'7", 6'8". Not going to be able to get good leverage if he's a guard because he's so
All
tall.
right.
Um, but here's like a little side note with guys I have coming up. I find this is what I find: guys who go to the States but never play youth sports, but they don't get playing time in the NCAA, kind of lose a step because they're essentially just practice squad guys. They may be playing Div 1, but they're not getting real reps and they're not playing 3 downs. So I find this kind of hinders them. I'm trying to remember this gentleman's name. I think it was Nate
Yep.
Anderson. I saw him at the combine. He was decent, but I just felt like there was guys who played youth sports who were outperforming him by far. It's because he's just one of these guys who doesn't get meaningful reps.
Oh, okay. Now, would you say that would
That's just
apply to someone like Dejon Brissett, or even in last year's draft, like a Justin McInnis or Braden Lenius?
maybe. So this is the thing with Brissett. He's by no means an NFL caliber receiver. He played at Richmond University, which is more of a academic school than athletic, and it's an FCS team. He did tear it up there, but at Virginia right now, he transferred. He's been injured, and he isn't really a role player. He's just there, and I think he's going to be a high CFL draft pick, but I don't see him making going to the NFL or making that level. But Patrice Rene, he's a starting defensive back in North
Yep.
Carolina, and he's been a starter for 1 year. This is his second year starting, but with the way his eligibility is, he can go back for one more year if he wants, uh, to North Carolina State, the Tar Heels. But I feel like he should go back for another year and chase that NFL dream instead of settling for CFL. I think NFL is very achievable for him if he has a good year this year and goes back for another.
Yeah, I would agree with that on Rene, especially with that ACL tear he had. I know that would definitely kill his NFL draft stock, so he might want to wait and go back another year and try again for sure. You know, because that
hundred
story
percent.
echoes Jonathan Kongbo, who from last year's draft was also supposed to go and get drafted to the NFL, but had an injury when he played at Tennessee and stock fell, and he ended up with the Bombers. So
Yeah, in reality, at their school, they are a starting talent. It's just a matter of injury.
exactly. So yeah, I would, if I were him, I would definitely go back a year, try to make the NFL.
Yeah. Then Kettle for uh the tackle from Laval. You know what you're getting. He's a Laval lineman, so he's obviously very good. Laval is closest to CFL. It's like when people compare Alabama to being like an NFL team. That's essentially what Laval is in the CFL.
Yeah,
Though with that said, he is gaining some NFL interest because he's a very good talent, but he's very raw. He he possesses skills to play in the CFL, but he has a very high ceiling and has a lot to go. Uh, but I do see him being a stud in the CFL, possibly breaking his way into the NFL. Not being a Laurent Duvernay Tardif of the Chiefs because he's on another level, but maybe being one of these guys that gets a shot maybe on a practice squad.
all right.
Then next is Adam Auclair. Uh, I think another Laval guy. He'll likely play safety at the next level, and I see him as an early pick. And I also see him being a safer pick because he's a Laval guy. But also he's been a stud every year he's played, and he has one, I believe, his one more year left to play because in the CFL, majority of these guys get drafted in their then might go back for their fifth year. That's not always the case. But it also depends being a a Quebec school type of guy because the way their eligibility works with the way they do high school. But I do see him being a safe pick and being one of these defensive players that will get playing time early on. May not be an instant starter, will play early on in their career. And then up next is Mason Bennett. He's a 2-year starting defensive end at North Dakota. He's in his third season. Starting last year, he led the team in sacks. I think he should be higher on this list because he's an NCAA player that actually gets playing time and goes against quality competition rather than just being a depth guy. And he may be playing FCS, but he's also going against some really solid talent. And he's big. He's got really good size, 6'4", 260. But maybe if they want him to gain a few pounds, he could play 3-tech, like defensive tackle, not nose, but defensive
Yep.
tackle, depending on his combine performance and how big he looks in person and a few others. Then Daniel Joseph next is a defensive end at Penn State, and he's one of these guys that I see that is only ranked on here because he's a Canadian in the NCAA. By no means, not by no means. How should I rephrase it? I don't think he's going to be that good, only because he's not getting any playing time. He's just going against guys at Penn State, and he reminds me a lot of Nate Anderson, but slightly. Even though Nate Anderson is a second string, I just don't see him as being. I feel like there's going to be some U Sports guys that look better than him at the combine.
So you think he projects to be a backup in the CFL?
I think, yeah, probably. I think so, unless he can turn around. It's just one of these guys who I find hinders themselves by staying on like one of these Power 5 teams like Penn State. Just, I know they have that dream, but in reality, you're not going to get any playing time, and you're just hurting your development because after a certain age, it's kind of tough to start learning new things.
Yeah.
And the next one is Carter O'Donnell, longtime starter for the University of Alberta Golden Bears. He reminds me of Mark Tay in a sense, a former drafted from that school, because he's mean and physical and is probably the best U Sports offensive lineman in this draft. Not like lineman in general, but from U Sports or CIS. When I think he's gonna kill on the combine, and his stock is gonna jump a ton. He's like Drew Desjardins. He wasn't very highly touted. He wasn't really on the list until you saw him at the combine absolutely murk guys, and I see him being like him, Desjardins. That once people see him at the combine, they're going to be like, holy crap, we want this dude. But I also see he will probably be a guard in the CFL only because that's like I find most linemen. It's hard to find Canadian tackles that are successful. It's just the position. So a lot of guys who are like very good tackles in U Sports tend to be guards at the next
Yeah.
level.
The only real Canadians that I see playing tackle right now are obviously Chris Van Zyl, who's been doing it for a while. And then Edmonton has Kyle Saxville, who's kind of been a rotational guy. And you've seen him play a little bit of tackle at the Canadian level, but he's by no means a starter right now.
Yeah. But also I find it takes a little while for Canadian talent to develop. That's why a lot of people are shocked when later round picks in the CFL don't make a roster, but it's just the way of the game. They're looking for people who they think can develop. It's kind of a crapshoot.
Yeah, true.
The next one I do have that's on the list is JJ Molson. He's a kicker from UCLA. He's made 43 of 62 career field goals thus far. He also handles kickoffs, but I just think just because he's in the States, he's on this list. To be quite frank, I think there's U Sports kickers just as good, or if not better. Because in reality, people are going to be like, oh, it's the competition. What do you mean? There's no competition kicking. I get there might be a better coming at you, but he's just on this list where he plays. I definitely use Sports kickers. I can't name any off the top of my head that are probably just. And he's just on here because of
I could
UCLA.
probably find a U Sport kicker here. I have a list of prospects. He's the kicker for Calgary. Here it is. Nico DeFonte. Yeah.
Defonte. Yeah, he's very good. Look at the kick he had against UBC. That the playoff. He can hit ones like that. This JJ Molson's just UCLA is trash too. Like, I know that doesn't mean much. You can be a good player, bad team. But Defonte, like he's showing what he can do. And JJ Molson has had a lot of misses after 45 yards, 45 to 50, and Defonte's doing it. He's used to Canadian rules, I suppose. So I do think Defonte might be. Then Thomas Jack. He's a good NCAA lineman and will be great in the CFL. He'll be a safe pick because he's not going to be one of those dudes you pick up that's going to get, might be taken away by the NFL. I don't see that. He's been starting since a freshman at guard for Buffalo, and I see him being just, I don't have a whole lot to say about him because he's just one of these safe offensive line picks because he's been a long time starter. Because he plays at a school like Buffalo, NFL teams don't really care about him. Fortunately, I do like to see Canadian guys succeed, but I don't think that's going to happen for him. Then there's Brendan O'Leary. He's one of these guys at Nevada that really play. He's a Canadian guy that plays. He's a depth guy that I've used this before. But I find him getting drafted high only because he's 6'4". It's really hard to find that big-bodied receiver that's Canadian. There's not many that I've seen in the past few years. The only one I can remember as of really recent is Simonize, who's one of these big. I think he's 6'3",
Yeah, he's
6'4".
6'4".
One of these super big Canadian receivers, and it's always good to have one of those. So I think he'll go high. I feel like they can probably develop him. I think it's a lot tougher as a lineman because I find there's not as much of a gap in skill, but there is with receiver from CFL to NCAA. So I feel like it'll be easier for him to adjust
Now you've talked.
and maybe
Oh
develop.
yeah. Okay. Now you've talked about U Sports guys who played versus NCAA deaf guys in certain positions. Now, do you think the receivers from the NCAA, do you think they have an easier time jumping to the CFL than the U Sport guys, or do the U Sports guys have the leg up there too?
You know, that's a very good question. I've always struggled thinking about this. For linemen, I know in kickers there's like not as much deviation, but I think it's because about like we have the waggle and all that it might be a little more difficult for American receivers, but it's really tough. I find a lot of Canadian receivers, U Sports guys get drafted. They get drafted high, but then in a few years they're off the roster. It's because there's so many good. There's so much Canadian talent at receiver that you can only keep so many.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a good question. I'll definitely have to come back to that one another time because I'm just not entirely sure because I find you even see this in the drafts. I find it's always linemen and linebackers that are taken first and that have the most success that are Canadian.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, like you talked about the big body receivers. The one from this recent draft, I'm gonna say is thinking of Justin McInnes. He's 6'5", runs a 4.5 40. The dude, I think he had a good NCAA career. He had about 800 yards. I think he played D1. Are those productive numbers? Do you think?
Yeah, it's tough. It depends what school you go to. I think it was one season or was it over his career?
That was one season he had 800 yards.
That's pretty good. I think he played Nevada or Yukon, but neither of those teams have high-powered
Oh, he played
offenses.
for
So
Arkansas State.
my bad, my bad. Yeah, I think they're an okay team, but also I find he's. I bet he's just. I found he is more of a red zone type of dude. So that's maybe why he doesn't have all those yards. But I think that's pretty good, solid competition. He's not like O'Leary, who's like a depth guy, but yeah.
I'll read you his numbers and you tell me what you think here. So In 2017, he had 49 receptions for 800 yards and 4 touchdowns. In 2018, he had 61 receptions for 748 yards and 5 touchdowns.
I think those are actually very good numbers for NCAA, if you think about it, because they're playing 12 games. Yeah, those are some solid numbers, I think. But then again, O'Leary isn't putting up numbers by any means like
Yeah.
this. I mean, he has like 300. Last season he had less than 300 yards, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
Then next is Mark Anthony DeQuay. I don't really know how to say his
I would say
last name.
DeCoy or DeQuay, yeah.
DeQuay, yeah. Now this is one of the best corners in CIS. He's a dog that likes to hit guys. You know, Montreal, the past few, as long as I can remember, has always produced really good defensive players and always has had a good defense in CIS. And I feel like this is the best corner in the CIS coming out of the draft. And I feel like if he has a good performance at the combine, I know I say this about some guys, but I truly see him moving up. Even though corners aren't usually taken early in the draft, I feel like him and Auclair could be these guys just based on how good they have been the past few years at their respective colleges. And then moving on to Dylan Griffin, he's a Western offensive lineman. He's like a Laval guy. You know what to expect. He's going to be extremely well coached, will be super technical. He's their best returning starter by far at Western, and I think he'll tear up the combine in one-on-one. Because the thing is, with the OUA, I play in the OUA. I can tell you this firsthand experience. By far the best defensive lines, because it's the biggest conference. But every week, this man's going against teams like Laurier, who've produced Robbie Anderson and not Robbie
Smith.
Anderson. I forget the gent's name. Robbie Smith, yes. Quadwo
Boateng, yeah.
my butchering the name,
Okay.
sorry. But they produce good linemen, and they have very good linemen this year. And Guelph and the teams like Queens, these teams all have some of the best defensive lines in Calgary. I mean, Calgary, my bad. Canada, rather. Some of the best lines in Canada. And he consistently eats. He makes these guys look like amateurs who, against everyone else, they destroy. Some of these for example, Guelph's defense had, I think it was 5 sacks against Carleton, and I'll be getting to that later. I'll just jump ahead and go to Jesse Lawson, who's the last person in the top 20. I just want to hit on this first. He's in the top 20, but he looked like an amateur against Guelph. I'll tell you that, because I saw that game. Their offense gave up tons of sacks. I believe 2 pick sixes. It was not a good game by them. And yeah, Guelph has a good defensive line, but if you want to be on the top 20, you got to be looking good against these guys. And he did not look very good. I think he's a boomer bust type of guy, but there's a really high ceiling, or he's just going to be crap. He shows flashes of greatness, but teams also want him because he's a massive body. He's a super big guy, and that's hard to find in CIS linemen. Like, a lot of these guys aren't his size. He got beat inside a ton against Guelph. Guelph was probably his worst game I've ever. But going back to this, we're gonna go back to De Lamar. Has had tons of, not tons, but has had injury concerns when healthy, and has been more or less a rotational guy at his school. I mean, not rotational. When healthy, he has been a rotational guy, but he's got potential, but has yet to show much. He's one of these guys in AA who I talked. The next we have Sinagra. Sinagra has probably been one of the best college quarterbacks to ever do it, but he's also going to go down as one of these guys who's never able to win a Vanier. I think it's tough putting QBs also in the top 20 list if you're not Nathan Rourke, because we haven't seen a good Canadian quarterback in the CFL in a long time. The reason O'Connor was on, it was different rather, is because he's a big body. Because he played at Penn State, and then transferred to UBC, and he won a Vanier Cup as a freshman. That's a different story. But then when it comes to Senegra, he's also struggled against top competition. He played U of S in the final for Can West, and he threw, I think it was about 4 or 5 interceptions against the University of Saskatchewan. And I think he just struggles when it is in the big moments. Like, he lost that Vanier Cup. I believe they were leading. And then there's Tyler Ternikowski, great CIS receiver. Compete with anyone at this level. Uh, I'm surprised he is not ranked higher because his production's been very good. But I also think he could be producing more. Just because, but the thing is, Waterloo's offensive line is pretty bad. So Trey Ford this season has not been getting a lot of time to give him the ball. And then, yeah, that's the top 20 from my perspective. Any questions, Jimmy?
All right, so I've got a couple here. Let me pull them up. All right. So do you think Adam Sinagra, after you did your evaluation, does he get a real shot with the CFL team, along with other QBs in this draft this year?
I don't think the only guy I see making it's Rourke. I hate saying that. I do like to see Canadian guys succeed, but I think he's just going to be like um, Christian Merchant, one of these dudes who was a stud in college, but just doesn't have what it takes to make the CFL. But that's no knock on him. This is not. I know it's Canadian football, but it's so tough being a Canadian and making a roster because there's Brandon Bridge, there's Hugo Richard, and then there's O'Connor. I think Senegra could make it because I do think he's better than Hugo Richard. But I suppose Montreal might just be having him because he's the hometown kid.
True.
But it's going to be really tough. Who wants to develop a Canadian talent? It's really tough, when you could be spending that roster spot.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you on that, but well, I am gonna fight you on some things because Sinagra, even a couple years ago, there was an article about him I read on Three Down Nation that kind of caught my eye. He threw for 650 yards one game, which is ungodly. I can't remember.
Yeah, that might have been. I think it was U of A, but the thing was, U of A, not this year, but in years past, statistically had one of the worst defenses rather in all of Canada.
Oh, okay. Now, I know
Yeah.
you compared him to Chris Merchant there. I know Chris Merchant didn't make it because he had a lack of arm strength. Do you see that in Sinagra? Is his arm the reason you don't think he makes it?
No, I think his arm is stronger. I know this doesn't. I know saying he's Canadian is a crappy excuse, but it's just the way it is. These guys aren't. It's not like in the States where you eat and breathe football your whole life, like some of these quarterbacks, like Bo Levi did living in Texas. This guy's from Quebec. Though football's big there, it's just different. They're bred different in the States to play quarterback than you are here.
Yeah, that's true, but is there a way, do you think, that we can change that to develop actual Canadian quarterbacks?
I think make the roster rules a little different where you got to carry a Canadian quarterback.
Oh, I was in full support of that when the CBA was going on, and shout out to Brandon Bridge who carried the torch for Canadian quarterbacks. Whether you love him as a player or you hate him, the dude made sure that when Canadian QBs start, they count now. So I'm glad
Exactly.
on that front, and we might see, like, we're seeing more Canadian quarterbacks getting carried on rosters. Where look at 5 years ago, there wasn't really anybody. Maybe Brad Sinopoli. I don't know if he converted to a receiver yet at that point, but there were no Canadian quarterbacks. Now let's see, there's O'Connor, Hugo Richard, and I think Brandon Bridge right now, who are either on rosters or probably are good enough to be on rosters.
There used to be
Oh,
Buckley for Calgary, but he was a good goal liner, short yardage type of guy. I think he saw the writing was on the wall and that they didn't really consider him as a future. Say if something happened to Bo Levi, he was always going to be a career backup, so he chose to go to med school and going to a different
I'm
profession.
not sure about that because in his last couple years, I think Bo got hurt or had to step out for a game, and then they left Buckley in there. They didn't panic and run for another guy. So
No, that was near the end of his career. But I just mean like I think he felt like, there's not as much money in this. I could be
yeah,
a doctor, have a much more secure
that
job because being a Canadian, anything.
that I 100% agree with you on. Um, yeah, I think he could have developed into a quarterback that is legit a mainstay on a CFL roster. But yeah, he chose medical school. I can't really blame him
Mhm.
for that.
Yeah.
And then you already answered this, but the guys that we're never gonna see, it's Gainville and Claypool, and
Gallimore and Claypool.
Gallimore. Okay, and then I know you talked a bit about Rourke. I think last year it was that I heard he might be a 5th to 7th round pick in the NFL. You said he might be a PR guy or get a camp. Why do you think he kind of dropped off that far?
I think it's just the amount of it's an issue not playing Power 5. He's playing outside the Big 10, the Big 12, SEC, ACC, did I say Pac 12? Yeah, so the Power 5, he's not playing in. I think he's not like Carson Wentz where he was playing at the school, but Carson Wentz is winning natties. He was tearing it up. Rourke is tearing it up, but not not like he's like blowing the doors off anyone with these stats, or he's playing against super good competition. I think that's the issue. I think, say, if he played for a team in the Power 5, uh, let's say he had these numbers and he was playing on a different team, I think NFL consideration, and if the competition was slightly better.
Interesting. Now, Oh,
Because
sorry.
look at Malik Irons. He played at Ohio. He was running it down everyone's throat, and PFF had him very highly graded as one of the top backs in NCAA, and he had zero NFL hopes.
Yeah, that was interesting because yeah, he was a good running back and he played decently when he got time in Hamilton. He unfortunately got injured, but yeah, that's interesting. Sure. Now, do you see a team maybe that's weaker at quarterback? I'm looking at you, Ottawa. Go and try to get both Sinagra and Rourke. Say if they want to go Canadian that way.
I don't see them taking two Canadian quarterbacks. But I could see them taking Rourke and kind of grooming him. Maybe dumpster fire season, be on the pain ranking, so to speak, just to develop him. But if they do, they need to get a like or Davis. They need someone who's going to be able, because I think after, say, 2 or 3 years,
He'll be what? Sorry, you cut out.
he'll be a dominant
Oh
quarterback.
yeah, but I'm saying that if you're gonna have Nathan Rourke as a quarterback, he's counting against the ratio, right? So if he gets hurt, you need to have a Canadian backup to preserve your ratio. So that
Yeah.
might be where
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Sinagra comes in.
Or you could pick up uh,
Bridge.
that
Yeah,
Bridge.
you
Yes.
could do that
Sorry.
and have 3 Canadian quarterbacks. I'm not against that either, honestly.
Oh, I meant just having one of the two. I mean, two of not have Snagger, have
Oh
Bridge
yeah.
and Rourke.
I don't know. Yeah, I could see that Bridge and Rourke working, but yeah, I do want to see Sinagra get a shot too. So like I said, I'm trying to fit him in somewhere. Even if it's on a
Yeah.
practice roster, just as a development guy.
Yeah,
And then
for sure.
we were talking off the recording here. You said there's another Canadian quarterback who has some NCAA experience that's playing in U Sport right now. Could you talk a little bit about him?
I forget his name off the top of my head. I know it's bad, but he's playing at the University of
I'll
Toronto.
try to find his name right
Toronto's
now then while you're talking.
ranked number 10 in the nation, but they've only beaten Laurier, Windsor. So take that with a grain of salt. They had a bye week. so they could be just won those 2 games and could end up being bad. But he's leading the nation in passing right now and has the best offense right now. And he used to play, if I'm not mistaken, at Washington State University, but was like O'Connor. He was never ever going to play, so he transferred to Toronto. Went 0-8, went to the Scouting Bowl. They went 0-8 U of T last year. Then he went to the Scouting Bowl, didn't have a good season, but now it's like he just flipped the switch and he's throwing on everyone. Like Laurier's defense is no slouch, and he only lost Waterloo by 3 points.
Interesting. Now, for those of us who don't know, what is the Scouting Bowl?
So the Scouting Bowl is like East-West. It's essentially you go there when you're in your 3rd year of eligibility of sports.
All right.
And you play against each other and kind of it's a scouting bowl, and then you do some weightlifting and stuff in front of scout.
All right, and you said he struggled in that?
He did indeed struggle now. I don't remember exactly what it was, but his numbers were very unimpressive and his team got blown out.
All right, now I found the name of the guy. His name is Connor Ennis. Yep.
Yes, that is him.
Yep. So maybe if he has a light up year, people could pay attention to him and he could be like a Michael O'Connor. But I just wanted to highlight that maybe there is a 3rd Canadian quarterback in play here.
Yeah, 100%. I feel like once they update this, he'll be on.
Now, for the last question I have for you, are there any guys that you see that are just on the cusp of making the top 20 that probably be in there next time around?
I don't know about making the cusp. It's going to be tough. I'm going to be quite frank. I'm not sure anyone off the top of my head, but it's going to take a little bit of time to see how U Sports shakes out because guys have 3 games, and they made this list definitely in mind before the season started. Right. So I think as the season goes on,
they'll move and shake. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for talking about the draft with me, James. Again, we're gonna be doing this every time a ranking comes out, and again before the draft, we're gonna probably do a show, maybe a little bit of a mock draft, and James and I will talk about that. And yeah.
Well, thank you. It was fun.
Awesome, man. Yeah, thanks for being on, and we'll have you on in the future for sure.
Alrighty, thank you.
So on to our weekly news. Stephen Charles, an NFL veteran Canadian, has signed with the Edmonton Eskimos. He likely projects to be a defensive tackle for that team. Trevor Harris is to meet with a doctor and get a timetable for his injury on Tuesday. And then Rob Bagg, the longtime Saskatchewan Rough Rider, has announced his retirement. Rob Bagg will be remembered for just how hard he worked and coming back from 2 major injuries that are generally career enders, but the man just kept pushing through and kept working hard.
I heard him on the radio today. He said he tore his ACL 3 times, and he still had a pretty good career with those injuries. So happy he was in the green and white.
Yep. All right, so to conclude the podcast, as per usual, we have our predictions for the games next week. For me, I have Calgary beating Toronto, Hamilton beating Edmonton, Winnipeg beating Montreal, and BC beating Ottawa.
Interesting. I have Calgary winning, and I have Edmonton beating Hamilton. And my hot pick of the week, I got Montreal beating Winnipeg and BC beating Ottawa.
Oh, that's a hot take. I don't know if Carter likes that one.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
I think they can do it.
I respect it. I could see it happening. I don't think it will.
Yeah.
I've got Calgary winning. Hamilton takes it over at Edmonton. I think Winnipeg wins, and I think BC beats Ottawa again.
Makes sense. Those are our predictions. Remember to follow the True North CFL podcast on Twitter, Instagram, And our podcast is now available on several platforms, not just YouTube. If you search up the True North CFL podcast, you will find us on Spotify and SoundCloud. And be sure to like, share this podcast, and subscribe. This is the True North CFL podcast signing off.